All right, good evening everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at the Smart Energy Council May event. We're delighted to have some excellent speakers this evening with Geoff Cameron, who's with the Narara Ecovillage, which is taking a development and taking it off-grid, as well as various other interesting initiatives around energy and sustainability. So we're pleased to have Geoff here. He'll be followed by Alex Robinson, who's going to give our future leaders speech. He's set up his own energy business in the solar space around solar optimization. So we're pleased to have them here. By way of introduction, I'm Nick. I'm with the Sydney, the Smart Energy Council Sydney chapter. So we hold these monthly events. We're glad to have everyone here tonight. And we have guest speakers who provide interesting insights into the energy space, touch on different developments. And then, as Alex is kindly providing tonight, we have the Future Leaders Talks, which comes from a recent graduate who's doing something interesting in the energy space. So we welcome new people. We also welcome feedback. If you've got any ideas for future speakers or how the events could work, then come and speak to me. But we want to be the leading forum in Sydney for bringing energy professionals together. Even if you're not an energy professional specifically, have an interest in the space to learn about new developments in the sector and share knowledge and network and build those connections. So without further ado for this evening, I will pass over to Geoff to introduce us to Narara Ecovillage and some of the initiatives they're doing. Thank you, Geoff.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to come and always happy to talk about Narara Ecovillage, which has pretty much taken over my life the last few years. We'd like to acknowledge the elders past and present of the Gadigal, I believe it is, nation, who've been custodians of this land on which we meet for countless generations. Mobile phones off, I don't think anyone's mentioned that yet. So, who are we and what are we doing here? And why would you be interested? Yeah, that's a bit touchy. I'm scrolling the mouse here. Ooh. I might need someone to press buttons.
Is that too sensitive for you?
Oh, I got it. Very touchy. So what are we doing here with this project, the Narara Ecovillage project? Well, we're trying to build a sustainably, environmentally and economically sustainable community on the Central Coast of New South Wales. A group of people spent a number of years looking for a site to build an eco-village. They looked up and down the coast, all the way down to Narara, and finally the perfect piece of land came on the market, which was 150 acres being sold by the state government, which was formerly a horticultural research station just outside of Gosford on the Central Coast. At the front gate there's suburbia, walking distance to high school and train station. Behind the front gate is just a rural valley, just all green, all trees, conservation forest, beautiful setting. You can see a dam here, that's on our site. So it took a number of years to find it. We bought it in 2013 and we set about designing and building our eco-village. We lodged the DA for the first stage. The site had been zoned for 120 lots when we bought it. It was zoned by the state government. They just assumed that a normal developer would buy it and put in McMansions like Western Sydney, so it was zoned appropriately for that, which was completely inappropriate for us. However, we did put in a DA for the first 60 lots basically straight away to get financially viable. We actually failed to buy the land 2 years earlier for $9.5 million, just missed out, but succeeded in buying it 2 years later for $5 million. Long story. Haven't got time to go into it now. We'll talk about it. Okay, and this is what we bought. Everything inside the red line is the site of the project. This is the suburb of Narara. There's a high school just here, there's a hospital just here, there's a train station here, and so on. So it's brilliantly accessible. An hour and a half from Sydney on the train. I came down tonight. And all of this white zone here is the residential area as zoned by state government. This is floodplain, these are rural lots for agriculture, this is conservation forest, and all around us is Strickland Conservation Forest. So on three sides, almost on four sides, we are conservation forest, which is magnificent. And this is a valley. The whole The whole valley runs in this direction, north is up this way. So the development's on the slope facing east. And stage 1 is this area here, stage 2, which we're designing now, is this area here. 60 lots here, maybe 55 lots here, something like that. And then a couple more will be scattered around. So that's the site, and here's the dam. Huge dam comes with a 45 megalitre irrigation licence, annual licence. So, who are we? We started out at about 15 families. By the time we bought the site, we're about 25 families, and today we're about 85 families, which is more than 200 people, so this is sort of in the early days. And these 200 people have formed a co-op, and therefore we are the owners of the site, we are the developer, we are the water, sewer and electricity utility, fully licensed. We are the customers buying the lots and the residents living in the village. And we're also the bank. We have totally self-funded. We've spent close to $20 million by now without borrowing a dollar from the banks, which greatly reduces the risk of the entire project. So our structure, we've got a cooperative, which is the 85 families. We have Net Power Private Limited, Net Water Department, an eco-living network, and a community association is about to be formed in about a week's time. This is our outreach arm, it's the not-for-profit arm. The developer is a for-profit co-op, and it had to be, because if the whole thing folded and it was a not-for-profit, we couldn't get a single dollar back out, even though we'd put in, $5–10 million. So that had to be for profit. So this is a separate entity doing all the outreach and education courses. I've just done a 4-day course there last week in natural material building, because I'm about to build a house. Net Power, it started out just as a department. Like Net Water is a department within the co-op. It was a department until we got an arena grant for about $1 million. They couldn't get their heads around giving $1 million to a co-op. So we had to move the power into a separate proprietary limited, 100% owned, and then they could figure that out. So, the smart grid works. The smart grid. So, our original concept, when we first thought about all of this, we're going to build an eco-village. What about the energy? Well, it'll all be PV and batteries. We'll go off-grid because we're that kind of people. And we'll get net zero greenhouse emissions. We'll minimise our operating costs because we won't pay any electricity bills to anybody. And we'll maximise our independence and reliability. And by the way, it's a symbolic rejection of the fossil powered grid. That's what we thought. We don't think that now. We've progressed. So here's the journey. Oops. So our energy, specifically our energy aspirations, each household is a net renewable energy exporter over the year. And we've got some building standards which say how many kilowatts of PV you have to put on your roof as a starter, which is basically the number of bedrooms plus one, which we think will get you there. But if you need more, you put more. And if you've got more than you need, that's great. You're a net exporter. And it'll be the same for the entire village. The entire village will then be an entire exporter, because for all the community facilities, we'll put up community PV so that the whole village is a net exporter and a virtual power grid. And we've got very efficient house designs. We've got rules about what you can build and how big it can be and what it's made of, the embodied energy, the passive solar design, the recycled material content, etc., etc., etc. And we want to know what appliances you're putting in and what their stay ratings are. Home energy management technology will actually guide all the owners on what to do and how to do it. And then, obviously, we're all members of an eco-village. We all subscribe to the same ideals, so we'll all be subscribing to education and behavioural change to minimise our greenhouse emissions. And the whole point of the village is to be a model for the rest of the community. We don't want to close the gate and just live sustainably by living in a cave and eating gruel. We actually want to show the rest of the community you can actually be sustainable and have a better lifestyle at the same time. So, we've actually had a lot of help along the way. And specifically, the New South Wales government came up with $70,000 to do a feasibility study on a smart grid. And having successfully done that, we then went to the arena and have successfully got a $1.2 million grant to actually implement a smart grid and figure out how to do it, because as we're finding out now, it's extremely hard, which is why everybody isn't doing it. So it starts with a smart home, obviously, and many people in this room know a lot about how to live sustainably in their own home. So it's solar on the roof, obviously, maybe some storage for energy, efficient lights, and then a user interface, which is basically your energy management system, which allows you to see what's going on and to manage it. We've actually implemented a couple of sample carbon track devices so that we can remotely monitor what's going on, because you have a couple of existing houses on site, so we're remotely monitoring those as a trial of carbon track. But we've also looked at various other equivalents of carbon track which allow in the cloud visibility and some control of the devices in your home, the batteries, state of charge, the PV output and so on. We haven't necessarily settled on this one, but it's the one we're comfortable to start with anyway. So how do we manage demand? Obviously, we're only currently planning doing solar PV within the village. We looked at wind. Yeah, we'd love to do it, but getting it through council is a nightmare because we're so close to a suburb. So one day we'll have a go at it. We looked at pump solar, we've got a big dam, we've got a hill, but there's no storage on the hill, and it would be environmentally very difficult in the conservation forest to put a reservoir for that purpose, given the economics each year is getting worse and worse compared to other alternative storages. So we haven't gone that way. So it's basically all PV is our energy generation. So obviously that's midday, whereas the demands tend to be morning and evening. So what we're all about firstly in demand management, delaying demands until the solar's, or advancing demands until, for the period the solar's running, or storing energy from when we're collecting the solar to when we actually need it in the evening.
Can I just ask, what sort of demands can you delay? We're talking about human behaviour, people getting ready for work.
Time delay on your washing machine,
Okay,
your dishwasher,
Yep.
that sort of thing. Obviously, water heating we'll do at midday when the sun is shining. Those sort of demands, and things like air conditioning will run when the sun is shining, so that when you get home your house is cool or your house is heated, depending on what time of year it is. So whatever's controllable, we will control. Yeah, that's the idea. So
who's the we controlling?
I'm sorry?
Who is the we who is controlling?
Well, we are all the one group. The customer and the resident and the owner and the utility is all the one group of people. So it doesn't really matter, it's us.
But yeah, I understand that, but have you got a system to control when the air conditioning comes on in this house?
Well, that's a topic we're coming to. That's a really good question. Do I want my utility, even though I'm a member of the utility, I vote at the meetings, do I want my utility to turn off the oven in the middle of making the souffle, or turn off my widescreen television just before they announce who've done it? There are some real issues around that.
Yeah, sure.
But there are some things I don't care about. So long as the water's hot when I turn on the shower, why would I care what time of day it got heated? And if my house is cool when I get home, even better. I don't have to go home to a hot house and turn on the air conditioner. So, there's some real issues around that, But anyway, what's the difference between a smart grid and a traditional grid? Well, the big one is information. Traditional grid, they come and read your meter once every 3 months if you're lucky. With a smart grid, we need to know basically in real time what's coming off your PV, what are the demands in your house, what are the demands in the village, and not only that, then use that information in clever ways to forecast the demand and the output of energy tomorrow and the day after, so that we can manage our batteries, so that we can manage our import and export from the grid. And we've got our own fancy poster now for the village, thanks to collaborations with Beast Solutions, which is a consulting group in Canberra who specifically do smart grids, and they're helping us design it. CSIRO, particularly up in Newcastle, their energy lab up there has been really helpful. Switched in, Carbon Track and Ausgrid have all assisted in designing what we're doing. And basically what we've got is a single high voltage connection to Ausgrid at the front gate. A meter, which is a high voltage meter, and behind that everything's private. We've imported our own transformer because we want to be importing and exporting large amounts of energy and swapping between them very quickly as demand and production fluctuate. In order to not upset Ausgrid, we've imported a on-load tap change transformer, first of its kind in Australia, from Schneider in France, and that allows us to do that. It really is the heart. It controls voltage and frequency inside and outside.
So what's that called? Sorry.
On-load tap change transformer.
Sorry, again?
On-load tap change transformer.
Cap change.
Tap.
Change.
Where you tap the windings on the coil.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep. And behind that we have our own big switchboard, which then distributes power to the posts all around the residential lots. We have our own water utilities, so we're running a sewerage works, so we're pumping water to recycle water at the top of the hill, we're pumping drinking water at the top of the hill, which is also the fire water. So we're scheduling that sort of thing. We have street lighting, and we have lots of community buildings. There are about 40 or 50 buildings on site or structures of various kinds, including office and laboratory for 100 staff and a meeting hall for 100 people and so on. So there's significant loads for the community as well as the individual loads in the houses that we're managing, and we're putting in significant quantities of battery storage as the heart of the system, and the smarts around the battery storage are really the smarts of the smart grid. When demand is exceeding production, do we take it out of the battery? Do we take it out of the grid? What's that decision based on? Well, it's based on forecasting for tomorrow and the day after. So really it's the smarts around battery management is where the smart grid are going to be. So obviously we need to monitor loads and generation, we need to forecast future loads and generation, we need to decide when to store and when to export, decide when to draw down the batteries or import from the grid, we need to manage the voltage and frequency inside and outside our own grid, comply with Ausgrid export-import connection specifications, share power in the village and deliver low cost energy to residents and produce operational net zero emissions. That's all we want to do. And this is our newly installed tap change transformer.
What's the voltage, may I ask, that you're interfacing with Ausgrid?
33 kV is our connection out to the world. And then 415 obviously reticulation around, and one of the decisions, do we go DC or AC? We'll talk about that. Approvals. This is like swimming through customs. This is unbelievable. Gosford Council approved the DA through a merger. Whalen took over. They don't agree with the DA. Could you please submit a new DA? We're halfway through $10 million of civil works. Please submit a new DA for what you're doing. Seriously. DPI controlled activity approval because there's a stream where waterfront land, so we need another approval. Wicker licence. Water Industry Competition Act, if we want to run a sewerage works on our own properties in order to produce recycled water, we need to become a licensed water utility. It took from 2014 to 2017. Well, not quite. We don't have approval to operate anything yet. We've got a licence, but it doesn't allow you to do anything. There's another 3 stages we're going through. We've just got 7 pages of questions from the auditor, which then, once we satisfy all that, it goes in front of the minister, and he decides whether or not he wants to agree that we can start. So, don't get me started. Exemption for retail, we've got that. We've got exemptions. We are considered, it's like you're a retirement village operator and you're selling to the individual villas, or even a campground where you've got permanent residents and you're selling energy to them. They're considered embedded networks and they get exemptions. Well, we fall into that category very happily. So we don't have to go through that kind of ridiculous stuff for our electricity retailing so far. But of course things change by the week around here. Ausgrid connection, we're up and running, got through all of that, a bit of a nightmare. And obviously EMC, AER, we've got all those regulations we've got to comply with. And Ausgrid, and Energy Australia supply and retail of last resort. So, we'll talk about some of the issues that come with all of that. Smart grid deliverables. In order to get our $1 million grant from Arena, we need to deliver 275 kilowatt peak of residential PV on their roofs, plus 196 kilowatt peak of community on the community facility roofs. We've got to put in 460 kilowatts hours of battery storage and figure out how to manage it. We've got to deliver high efficiency homes We've got to demonstrate home demand management working, community demand management working for community loads. And then what it's really about, the Arena grant is really about information sharing. We have to have a website running where all of this information is basically delivered live. Each household's production and consumption delivered live. The village as a whole, the voltage status of our connection to Ausgrid delivered live. All of this is what Ausgrid wants to know and deliver to the public. So that suits exactly our purpose in doing all of this, is to share it.
But deliver to the public, meaning that when you go on holidays,
Yep.
Your street address and your house, the thieves know you got.
Well, no, you don't put the house address on it. It's all anonymous,
Okay.
but it's
NMI.
all 120 houses will be listed, and in real time you'll be seeing their input-output basically on our website. Yep. So some of the dilemmas that come along with this kind of stuff, and AC or DC grid or both, because we're producing so much PV, it's DC. So much battery, it's DC. Why would we convert to AC, go to the battery, convert back to DC, come out of the battery, go back to AC, go back to the house, convert, why would we do that? We could just run a DC grid. And we did have a good think about this, and maybe a DC grid and an AC grid. But really, if you want to go to Bunnings and buy something, you're not going to get DC. We weren't quite ready to be that pioneering. Like, we're taking enough leaps in the dark. That one we didn't need to do. So we've gone with a conventional AC 415 volt reticulation network to the houses.
Ghosts of Tesla around.
Yeah. We'd like them anyway. Centralised community or distributed individual batteries. So we have to put in huge central batteries to run all our community loads. Do we want each individual house to put their own Tesla on the wall? Or would we rather just give us that money and we'll add to our central big battery in a container in the middle of the village and we'll manage it for them? So the advantage of that, for example, I'm away for a week, the village could be using my piece of the battery every day in and out and giving me the money. And we can forecast 2 days ahead what the load's going to be, what the production, based on the weather forecast, and we can make decisions about import, export from the outside grid, which the household probably is never going to do. So we can be much more efficient with the use of batteries if it's centralised and we're managing it centrally. But there is the loss in getting it from your roof, through your inverter, to our battery, out of our battery, back through, to your house. It's not an obvious question. At the moment, we are encouraging people to subscribe to the central battery, but they can do the other if they want, or they can do both if they want.
What sort of percentage loss do you get?
Sorry?
What percentage of loss do you get?
Going through AC, DC, DC, AC, AC.
Well, back to the
I haven't got the numbers in front of me. We did get one of our experts to look at it.
It's about 30%, something like that.
Can be as much as 30%. Sounds about which is why why we really had a hard look at it. It's not a trivial number, but it depends a bit on the quality. Is it frontiers?
And would you be running DC between house and your centralised battery?
No, that's it. It goes through the regular reticulation network. It goes through their meter, because we've got regular household meters, through the meter, through the regular reticulation, back to a central point, the switchboard, where we'll take it and connect it to our battery. So that's an AC connection, definitely.
Geoff, with the community stuff, is that DC connected to all the community stuff? Or have you, the whole lot, even the community solar, is that connected to DC at all? Or?
The community solar, well, we don't have batteries at the moment, so it's irrelevant.
Well,
it's got to go through inverter anyway.
Yeah.
But we're about to go to market for a request for proposal from the market for the batteries and for the solar. So we'll see what they come back with as a proposal for what the battery manufacturers suggest in terms of battery inverter grid, how that connection works at that scale. We're not the experts. We'll let the industry tell us. Single phase or three phase house wiring. Very few people will have more than 10 kilowatts peak on their roof, so they won't need a three phase connection for that. Very few people have got a you know, grade 3, whatever it is, EV charger for their every vehicle in the garage, so they don't need three-phase for that. So most households don't need three-phase. So should they just put in single-phase wiring? And then what happens if they get an electric vehicle? Maybe they might get a second electric vehicle. They might need more than 10 kilowatts in order to charge up their cars, even if they don't have a fast charger. So now they need three-phase. So should we tell everybody to future-proof your home by putting in three-phase? Well, maybe they just do it up to the meter and leave it there for now. Maybe that's sensible, because we can see a lot of people will probably get there one day and wish they had done it. Interesting question. Do homeowners give the community the right to switch their appliances on and off? We just had that discussion, didn't we?
So how do you do phase balancing then?
Phase balancing, if there's a three-phase connection to the meter.
Say everybody's decides to go single phase, how do you do the phase balancing?
How do we do the phase balancing if everybody's connected single phase and we're going forward and back on a single phase? That's part of the dilemma of the smart grid, exactly. How do you balance the phases? Do you have a bunch of houses,
Because you've got a small population, if I can put it that way.
120 houses, yeah.
120 houses. Somebody comes along and puts on a big load on one of the phases that throws the whole thing.
A big aircon, whatever. Fast charging of a EV.
Yeah.
Because we all have charging points scattered around the village, even in the public car spaces for EV. And how do we balance that? Well, that's what we've got to figure out. If it was easy, they wouldn't give us $1 million to do it. Yeah, it's a good question. And we talked about, can they turn off my oven and my television, or just manage? And that's something we're discussing now with ourselves, basically, with our future residents.
What's the sentiment arising from that discussion?
Haven't come to a conclusion yet. Yeah, I guess it's can we demonstrate advantages to the homeowner if we do manage that? Basically it's managing your peak loads. When would we do it? Well, if we're shortage of power. If too many people have got everything turned on, we just don't have, we don't want to bring it in from the grid. We could bring it in from the grid, but we don't want to, so we'd like to curtail some of that. Or it might just be that we all agree that we will schedule everybody's hot water to balance out demand across the day in line with production. It might just come to that, and therefore do they need particular circuits with manageable loads that they're designing into their house from the switchboard so that we can control it at the switchboard, or are we going to put Wi-Fi devices on the hot water system or on the air conditioning system and go that way? Because we'd like to have it fairly uniform. We want to control it centrally. We don't want 120 different systems out there that we're trying to manage. So that's some of the design stuff that we're doing now, and some of the community-based stuff as to how far we go into the house, or are we happy to leave it to the homeowner to have control of their carbon track system and they manage their loads. I think there's going to have to be some compromise between those two. And what that looks like, I don't know in the end, because there's two competing things: the homeowner's wants and the grid's wants. They're not necessarily aligned, so we're going to have to resolve that over time.
And the homeowner wants vary tremendously from what personality is.
Well, for example, do we allow individual homeowners to go off grid?
Yeah.
Disconnect from us? Because that's the kind of people they are. That's why they came to the village. They just want to be, in their own little world of, earthship. We're building earthships. We're building, mud brick houses where, maybe they just want to be off grid. Well, that doesn't really suit where we are today. We started out thinking we wanted to be off grid, but now we wanted to be a net exporter of energy to the grid over the year, and you can't do that if you're not on the grid. So really that doesn't fit with our philosophy these days.
But if you're a homeowner there, maybe you want to have that option in case your grid, the company you own, goes belly up for some reason, the central battery system fails. If I've got a battery at home, then I might still have some power to cook my dinner.
That may be why you'd want a battery and some isolation devices in your home.
So it's still possible for me to have that?
However, why would our grid go down?
There's some issue. Again, maybe the cabling that brings the power to my house, storm.
Well, the cabling that brings the power to the house was laid last year, and it's all underground.
Okay.
So tree coming down isn't going to do it.
Backhoe.
Yeah, backhoe maybe. That'd be
Very unlikely. Look, I
Yeah,
agree, it's
well,
highly unlikely, but in principle, that's something.
In principle, absolutely. People have raised that issue. Yeah.
Finish up.
What are you doing about communications between the central management system and the individual houses?
We're in a happy position that NBN has just finished putting in the fibres to the home, to every house. In 2 weeks ago, as part of the rollout of the first 60 lots.
And you're able to use that fibre, are you?
Well, it's NBN, so every house is connected to the internet through fibre to the home, high-speed internet and reliable internet, and that's we don't really want 1,000 3G devices throughout the village or even Wi-Fi.
I was going to ask you
We'd
about that.
much rather do it through optical fibre. So we've got the happy option that everything can be connected by that. So why the hell wouldn't we? Yeah.
I was going to ask you about EMF.
Yeah, and EMF is an issue for many of the members. So we've given this, the optic fibre can do everything that you want. And now that everyone's building a new house, so you run your cat cables through the house so that you're not using Wi-Fi in the house if you don't want to. So that's a real advantage. Yeah, there was somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about whether you will allow people to go off grid. Presumably, as part of your exemptions from the embedded network regulations, you need to allow people to go on market as well.
Yeah, that was one of my risks on my next slide. You've been reading my mind. Okay. Some of the risks that we've encountered, and there's been a lot, changes to rules, changes to regulations, changes to regulators. It's just this roulette wheel as to what's coming next, down the line in this environment. Opposition and or ignorance from all levels of government and bureaucracy. For example, we've sat in a meeting with our local council, and one of the senior bureaucrats has looked us in the face and said, we're actually opposed to your village because it would create a precedent. That's what we're dealing with here, folks. Rapidly changing technology and costs. Battery, we've held off any battery decision. We've been designing, but batteries is changing so fast. And we're going to have to put in a lot quite soon. So we're going to have to put a stake in the ground and say, well, that's the technology we're going with. At the moment, it's probably going to be lithium, but there's so much coming down. Ultra capacitors look brilliant, and there's so many other developments that's just coming down the track. You really don't want to make the decision until the very last minute, because there really is big change in that area. PVs are fairly settled. They're on a nice trajectory. You can see where they're going year by year. That's not so hard. Contractors, partners, suppliers may not survive because the industry is changing so fast, prices are changing, businesses are coming and going, being swallowed up, disappearing. So it's really tough to choose your partners. Do we go switched in? Do we go carbon track? You have to look at their long-term viability. Your PV panel supplier, will they be around for 25 years to back up their warranty? These are interesting decisions. And customers can choose another retailer. Yes, they can. Our members can choose to not buy power from us. Under the current New South Wales regulations, they can go to any retailer and say, we'd like you to come into the village and deliver your power. We'll buy our power from you. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to make sure we're, cheaper and better, so that nobody's, even thinking about looking elsewhere, because that would really muck up our plans.
So you're banning human behaviour. Good luck.
There's nothing we can do about that.
By presenting one grid to Ausgrid as a user of energy, are you able to reduce the cost of your purchase power from one of the retailers?
We have negotiated very attractive deals, both for import and export. Yeah.
Can you tell us what they are?
John, do you want to tell us what they are? John is our retail manager for our network.
Well, we use ERN as the provider at the high voltage connection. So they receive the power from us, and also we buy power from them. It's time of use power. I think the key thing about it is that we've got the same tariff supply when we export power as when we buy power.
So it's time of use, but it's matched. The retailers match import, export at the same price.
And it gets a little complicated to actually give you a tariff because it's split into a whole series of different tariffs. My main beef, or our main beef, if you like, is that Ausgrid applies a fixed charge, much like we all as consumers get $1 a day as a charge. The high voltage charge is $50 a day, which doesn't sound a lot until you actually work that out on an annual basis, and it is quite a lot of money. So we have to get the first 35 or 40 customers up and running on the system before that will cover that cost. But that's a factor of the market, because whether you're AGL or net power, you pay $50 a day to enter the system.
Plus a whole raft of other charges around the network as a high voltage operator. There's all sorts of charges they add on.
So does that make a significant incentive for people to get onto the microgrid and participate in the cheaper cost of power from the grid? Are you still paying an average of 25 cents a kilowatt hour?
Well, we have time of use charging, and we are making it attractive relative to the offers you can get out in the market. Yeah, correct. Both in import and export. Yeah.
It's really just the time of use.
Sorry, could we all hear the question?
Sorry, yeah. Do you have a number of options for tariffs that each of the customers now choose from, like a regular retail review, or just the one?
No, it's basically, this is the offer. If you're a pensioner, we'll give you the usual discount. Apart from that, you pay the same as everybody else on our. It's a standard. Yeah, we don't offer tricky 24-month, low, introductory, because we're selling to ourselves. It's just the offer.
While you're on, you say you've got the same import and export tariff, and you're on time of use.
Yep.
So are you for example, in the middle of the day, you might have more of your own power available. Would you be exporting in the middle of the day and importing in the evening, or have you enough battery storage to...
Well, of course, that's part of the smarts in the smart grid, is forecasting demand and production over the next couple of days and figuring out when we should be exporting to the grid because we can, or when we need to import from the grid at the most attractive time because we know we're going to need it tomorrow.
But it's also a calculation on the capital cost of your how much battery storage you have, because if you want to be storing enough and selling in the evening, say, when demand is high, presumably the time of use tariff in the evenings, evening peak is higher. So how does it balance out? Do you spend more money on storage and export in the evening, or?
Well, the money we spend on storage is based on how much do we need. How much do we need in order to run? Well, we don't really need any in order to run. We could just import the whole lot from the grid if we want. So it gets to it's a financial calculation as to what's economic to put in terms of storage, so that we can avoid paying peak during the day, and hopefully get some nice revenue when we've got some excess during the day.
There's different objectives. You could be minimising the amount of import and being optimising your self-sufficiency, or you could be trying to make money by storing.
That is a decision. Do we want to be as self-sufficient over the year as possible and not worry about money? Or do we want to make as much money? And do we tilt the panels so that we get maximum annual production by doing it all in summer, or so we can be self-sufficient in winter? Those sort of decisions. They're interesting philosophical decisions. We're environmentalists, so we tend to not worry too much about the money, but we've got to be viable in the end. So great question. Okay, I think you're next.
So, as you said, customers could choose another retailer. If for argument's sake a few did, could you act as a community power operator, so myself or anyone else could buy power themselves as a retailer?
Sorry, say that again?
Could others outside of the village buy power off you as a retailer?
From us?
Yes.
Well, can
Especially-
we go outside our grid and become integrated with the surrounding community,
Yes.
and they become virtual, power stations providing PV and share in our. This is an idea that has occurred. We have no plan.
No, but at the very least, the question I'm asking is: so if you had a certain number of customers choosing other retailers, and that might affect the economics of the power company, the power retailer.
It certainly would.
Then in that context, you might find others who are outside who'd be willing, for whatever reason, to take your offer on board instead of someone else.
That thought has occurred, but we're not ready for that yet. We haven't got our own customers yet. Let's get them cooked up first. Eh? Yeah.
How involved is the community in all of these decisions?
You mean the surrounding community?
Yeah, and how does the communication happen?
Not very. When we were doing our DA, we had community meetings in the local hall and told everybody what we're doing. We're now just about to start stage 2, so once we've got some ideas in place, we'll go and do another thing. But really, there's inside the gate and outside the gate. Well, having said that, about half the houses outside the gate are now owned by members who've moved from Sydney like me. So, we're spreading our tentacles.
I actually meant inside. Like how?
Inside.
Yeah, the inside community.
Well, how do we run our co-op? We
Yeah.
have monthly meetings which go all day. All decisions are made by sociocracy, which means basically consent in a circle. Anybody can block any decision if they can't live with it, and so on and so forth. We have, 15 different subcommittees doing different parts of the village, and they're all circles of members making decisions, one of which met about 2 hours ago, talking about buying PV in bulk.
I'm just connected to that. Is each residence or household's vote equal?
Yep. There's no such thing as voting. It's consent. Yes. There's no 51% wins. It's 100% or none.
Has that been challenging?
Yes. Can be very challenging.
Is Lee Rhiannon one of your members?
But, being one of the 49% who loses can be pretty challenging too. So that doesn't happen.
Do you consider yourself a gated? Is it a gated community?
Well, today it is, yeah. We're not, only because for the last couple of years we've been a construction site, so we've had to fence the whole site anyway. And because there's only 2 houses occupied on 150 acres connected to a suburb, it's pretty insecure, if people can just drive in and out. Now they've got shiny new roads and they can burn up and down and things. So
But they're your roads are sort of community title as such.
it is community title, but it is all private land. Behind where is now the gate, everything is private and always will be. So they're not roads, they're conveyances or something.
So given that you've got a fair bit of battery storage there are companies like Reposit that will buy power from you when there's peak loads on the network and pay you an absolute premium.
Yep.
Have you looked into that at all?
We've certainly, we've looked into it, but we haven't seriously considered it, but we're very interested to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're offering, what their charges are, what their business model is, from what we can learn from it, absolutely. But we've never looked at doing business with them on that basis. But it's a good question. Yeah.
Do Ausgrid see this venture with the village as an advantage to their distribution system? Does it reduce maximum demand or something?
Oh, that's a great question. Who in Ausgrid are you talking about? Philosophically, they've not been very receptive to PV in general, historically, but they're starting to come around to see that they've got no choice. So they're starting to be a little bit more reasonable in their, approval process, etc. But there's still a pretty opaque bureaucracy, and you really don't know what's going on inside there. You just wait for an approval, or.
What's the flexibility around your membership structure in terms of exits, entries, transfers?
Yeah, come and go as you want. You have to buy $30,000 worth of share to get in, then you're an equal owner in the entire project, and you get your $30,000 if you go out. And totally up to you. Now, you might have to wait 12 months to get to $30,000 depending on where we are in the project.
Thank you, Geoff. Have you done a design calculation to give you so many hours and days of autonomy in your central battery system under adverse solar conditions?
We haven't, that I'm aware of, mainly because we're not yet sure of our loads.
Sure.
That's going to be an interesting one. We've got the street lighting up. We haven't started up the sewage work, so we're not quite sure. So it's a calculation we'd love to do, but no, we don't know the answer yet.
Just bringing out a couple of points. One was, I think perhaps it mentions as much, was the commitment to actually recoup the energy invested in each building. So that's one of the reasons for the export.
The embodied energy,
We're talking about the embodied energy being recouped over about 10 or 20 years, I can't remember what
The aspiration, I think, is 30 years in the building
so that's
standards.
one of the reasons for export as well, is to recoup the embedded energy.
Yes.
One point. And the other thing is that another complication to add to all of this is with the phased development is exactly when each house is going to get built, how many customers are you going to get year by year over the next 10 years.
Correct.
It's totally ungoverned. Unlike a normal housing estate, you sell off all the blocks of land and everybody builds within the next year or so.
We do have rules.
Over 10 years.
We do have rules about how long before you start and how long before you finish building your house, so that we're not a construction site for 10 years. That is part of our rules.
But particularly in the load, that's going to change the load, the batteries, and everything else over a long period of time.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, and one last little point was that some of the houses actually have a shade factor and things like that. So I think there's provision for some of the people to, if they can't get effective solar on their particular house, then they can use add to the community facilities.
Or somebody else's house who's got a bit of spare roof. Yeah, that's certainly part of our thinking. Because we're in the valley, there are some shading issues from big trees nearby and that sort of thing. So some houses won't be ideal for PV. So because we're on the same community, we'll figure out some other roof to put it on.
Just a few more things to consider.
How are these building standards enforced? Is that through bylaws and the community title?
Yes, it is. There's a community management statement, which is the rules of the community association, which everyone has everyone has to sign up to, just like strata rules for a strata building. Well, we have the same rules, and they say you need to get your building passed by John, who's one of the assessors for our building standards.
And you can write whatever you want into those, pretty much.
Yeah, we've written our own building standards. Yeah, absolutely. And it covers the embodied energy, the passive solar design, the percentage of recycled materials, the air quality using low off-gassing, etc., etc., etc. Water efficiency of licences, energy efficient appliances, etc. We done? No?
2 questions. Have you considered hydro on your dam?
Hydro on the dam.
And second,
we've looked at. We've just looked at. But it's so tiny and.
Right.
It's a glory hole and it finishes up way down there, and it'd be so piddly. Yeah, we might get there one day where it's not a serious issue.
And biogas from your sewage treatment plant.
Yeah, well, if everybody in the village could eat their own weight in grass every day, it would really help. But you don't get that much out of human sewage. But the plant we put in fact, it's only rented. Because it's fairly high energy, it's a modern membrane bioreactor. It was something we could put in, convince council to approve quickly, get our utility licence quickly, and when the rental period runs out, we'll decide what we really want to do. So who knows? Well, we're certainly aware of it. Thank you.
With sustainability development, the best way to showcase your leadership is to follow a framework. So have you guys decided any tool or framework you want to follow to showcase your leadership?
Have we decided what?
A tool.
A tool or a framework?
Every month we run an open day. We've been doing this for 4.5 years. Every month about 50 people turn up. We don't know where they come from. We don't advertise. They just keep coming, so we keep running open days. They're now called the Village Day. And we had one last Saturday, which was very convenient because we're in the middle of a natural building course and we were building a camp kitchen out of mud brick, straw bale, rammed earth floor. And they got to watch us do that as part of their open day activities. So that's absolutely part of our outreach. We're there to be seen, not just to live, So a good question.
I guess on that note, are there similar communities either here in Australia or overseas that you've modelled on?
Certainly there are the eco-villages. Not many in New South Wales. There's one just being built now in Hunter Valley, Shepherd's Crown. I was there a month ago. There's one down at Bega Way, down the south coast. There's 2 or 3 up in Queensland. We had a visitor from the Cape in Victoria. He came up, in fact the founder came up and talked to us 2 weeks ago. Spent a couple of days with us about what they're doing there and how they're doing it. I know they've dropped Ecovillage from the name of their development. It's now just called The Cape. So there are some around, but not many, and certainly nothing that looks much like us.
I think a big difference was we've got the dam, so we're doing our own sewage and things.
Yeah.
And this complication of electricity, I don't think, has anybody else tackled it at all? No. I mean, with the first licence was it the first water licence? To apply, so you have to train the government department how to process the application.
Yeah, we're still doing it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.